If you're a man that wants to continually grow how fulfilling your relationship with sexuality is, there is something to understand about the habit loop. This is a teaching that comes from The Power of Habits, which is a book, and Atomic Habits, which is a book. Now, Atomic Habits takes that process and it turns it into 4 steps. It's called a trigger or a cue. There is a desire, so there's a craving for something. There's a reaction from that desire, which equals a reward. So there's 4 parts in there. The trigger, the cue, is something that activates the habit. Now, this is what's really important to understand in relationship to sexuality. Now, this could be anything. This could be boredom. This could be, for smokers, eating a meal and they're done with the meal. And there's a trigger that happens internally which activates a cycle. Now, I'm going to connect this to sexuality in a moment. The craving comes from that trigger. So if you are a smoker and you've eaten a meal so many times and then you've smoked a cigarette afterwards, your body has gotten used to this chemistry roller coaster ride, which is consuming food, the food is done, and then smoking the cigarette. Now, in all of this, there's an impact on chemistry, there's an impact on sensations, feelings inside of the body and mind. And like Pavlov, if you've heard about Pavlov, which was the study around ringing a bell every time before a dog ate food, they would ring a bell. And then eventually they just rang the bell and the dog would salivate. So in the same way, over time, we habitually get our bodies to be reactive. Now, ultimately, the reward of the habit loop is a change in internal state. So a change in the mind, change in chemistry in the body. There's some sort of shift that happens. Now, when it comes to sexuality, what made me think about this is a lot of the times arousal has come to happen in connection to certain triggers. Certain triggers are what cue the arousal and you'll start to see there's different habits that form. Now, it's important to look at this so that we can start to be curious about what our triggers are. What triggers me into arousal? Now, the one that's at the forefront of my mind today is loneliness. Loneliness often is a trigger for arousal. Feeling of loneliness is sensations in the body, chemistry in the body, a level of energy. It's all of these things mixed together, which we would label loneliness. Now, why would that establish over time? If I'm lonely, I know that one of the greatest quick hits to change that internal state is intimacy. Intimacy, if I'm intimate with another person, I'm going to get serotonin, I'm going to get a chemical dump in my mind and in my body. Now, another example of this is stress or anxiety. I've worked with a lot of men that when they're super stressed out, whether it's from work, whether it's from to-do lists in day-to-day life, they want to go to sleep, they'll masturbate and ejaculate real quick before they go to bed. Now, as the name kind of suggests, it's a habit loop. It's habitual. It's not a thought process. It's just happening. We've actually lost power. We've lost control because habit cycles are just playing out. So this is one of those things where it's like, if we start to become aware of what triggers my arousal that's habitual? When is it that I find myself becoming aroused? It's this constant curiosity, not because we're trying to solve anything, but in the curiosity is where a lot of the liberation comes from. Once again, it's not trying to get to some answer. The process happens in the curiosity, in the discovery. So once again, this habit loop being a trigger, or they call it a cue, a craving that comes from that trigger, which is a desire to change that state. Then there's a reaction. I think they call it a response in the book, but it's definitely a reaction, which is some sort of action that has historically been, through data in the mind and experience, it knows that changes the state. And then there's that result. There's that, the reward. There's the reward at the end, which is a change of state. Sexuality is very sensational. There's a lot of chemistry that is dumped into the bloodstreams, body, mind, that has a massive impact on the internal state. And most of us, our sexual habits are very habitually coming out of past experiences and just existing in our life today. And the world doesn't give us much place to talk about sexuality. And in not being able to have very many conversations, it's just been kind of lurking there in the dark corners, playing out repetitively. So, curiosity. Where is it that you can see habitual aspects in your arousal? Where might there be loops playing out, whether it's stress, whether it's loneliness, desiring connection? It could even be validation. It could be approval. It could even be, this is taking it a layer deeper, it could be even disapproval. I know that doesn't make any sense, but when we get into habitual behavior, it's not always positive, the habits that are playing out. So be curious. What habitual behavior is playing out for you? In the curiosity is the discovery, is the empowerment. Utilize your relationship with sexuality to expand, grow into greater versions of yourself, and you will be outside of the pack as a leader, because not very many men are doing this in the world today. Go get it.